Coming up on Network Africa. Central African Republic holds its presidential election under a cloud of violence. Coronavirus cases in South Africa rise above 1 million. Plus, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he will receive a top-level delegation from Morocco this week. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shoboale. Let's begin today's program by taking a look at some of the stories that made headlines over the weekend.
Voters in Niger headed to the polls on Sunday in an election that is expected to lead to the West African nation's first transfer of power between two democratically elected presidents. A smooth handover would be a rare bright spot for a country blighted by widespread poverty and Islamist violence that has killed hundreds of civilians and soldiers in the last year alone.
Today is a special day for us. It's also, and most of all, a special day for Niger, which will experience for the first time in its history a democratic changeover, and I hope that this change will be the first step towards other changes in order to solidify a democratic process. I hope this first changeover will enable Niger to solidify its reputation as a democratic country in Africa and in the world.
Niger has experienced 4 coups since gaining independence from France in 1960. Former Interior Minister Mohamed Bazoum, the ruling party's candidate, is the overwhelming favorite to succeed President Mahamadou Issoufou, who is stepping down after 2 5-year terms. Meanwhile, people in Central African Republic voted on Sunday under a cloud of violence as the government, international partners and the United Nations tried to hold off a rebel advance. Militias hostile to President Faustin Archange Touadéra have stepped up attacks on the run-up to the presidential and legislative election. That's after several candidates, including former President Francois Bozize, were barred from standing earlier this month. Touadéra and the United Nations, which has 12,800 uniformed peacekeepers in the impoverished but mineral-rich country, have accused Bozize of being behind the rebel offensive, and there are concerns that a substantial number of the country's 1.8 million voters will be disenfranchised by the violence, specifically in remote towns, some of which are controlled by armed rebels. In North Africa, Turkish Defense Minister Hulusi Akar has warned that the forces of Khalifa Haftar and their supporters based in eastern Libya would be viewed as legitimate targets if they attempt to attack Turkish forces in the region.
This war criminal, Sir Khalifa, and his backers should really know that in the event of any attempt waged on Turkish forces, the killer Haftar's forces will be viewed as legitimate targets everywhere. They should get this in their heads.
Turkey is the main foreign backer of Libya's internationally recognized Government of National Accord, GNA, based in Tripoli, which for years has been fighting Haftar's Libyan National Army, LNA. The LNA is backed by Russia, the United Arab Emirates and Egypt. Finally, a fire killed at least 7 people and injured several others on Saturday at a private hospital that was treating coronavirus patients on the outskirts of the Egyptian capital, Cairo. Local media reports that the fire broke out at about 9 a.m. at Misr al-Amal Hospital in El Abu, some 30 kilometers northeast of central Cairo. According to initial investigations, the fire was caused by an electrical fault. The hospital was evacuated and closed, and patients were transferred to a public hospital in Cairo.
Well, ahead of the CAR's presidential election, 3 UN peacekeepers were killed in the country as tensions flared between government and rebel forces. The UN said unidentified combatants carried out 2 attacks, leaving 2 other peacekeepers injured. The group were stationed in CAR to quell violence ahead of presidential and parliamentary elections on Sunday. Rebel groups have seized several towns close to the capital, clashing with government forces and looting properties. Well, let's get more on the violence in the CAR and the elections conducted on Sunday from security analyst David Otto. Thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you.
As a security analyst, how would you assess the polls conducted on Sunday, considering the fact that there had been some form of violence in the run-up to the elections?
I think you've got to look at, several contexts. The government says that the elections went on peacefully, and that is a statement that is backed by MINUSMA. But when you look at the official report of the Security Electoral Committee itself, it tells you that within the 17, what they call prefectures, especially in Bangui, there was a high turnout of electorates. Of course, that is because the MINUSCA forces, that's the UN mission in Central African Republic, were highly present there. You had Russian forces, Rwanda forces, and of course the local FACA, which is the army of the Central African Republic, and the police. But if you go out of the province and look at the 16 prefectures, which are outside Bangui, you'd find that half of these areas had incidents ranging from no voter turnouts, especially in the 2 provinces where, as you rightly mentioned, the 3 Burundian UN forces were killed. That's in Dekoa and Bakuma. Other areas had incidents of low turnout in terms of voters, fire exchange, election votes polls not opening on time, voting polls opened very late, and in some areas where candidates were asking electorates not to vote. Now, the overall assessment is that elections took place, but there is a lot of people who would feel that the insecurity by the CPC-led Bouazizi rebel coalition has caused a lot of people to be disenfranchised.
You mentioned that former President Francois Bouazizi, who was barred from running in this election, called for an election boycott. And there are reports that the peace deal signed between rebel forces and the government has been declared dead by the CPC group. Surely this would have an effect on the security situation in the country.
It will have a significant effect. Of course, Central African Republic is not just Bangui. And you rightly said there was a 2019 Khartoum agreement by 14 rebel groups. And, there's one other group that signed the agreement very recently. They call them the PK5. They're 5 kilometers away from the UN headquarters in Bangui. Now, 7 of those armed groups have now joined the Bouazizi-led faction. They call them the CPC faction. And, they are causing a lot of havoc. Now, Bouazizi, who called for the elections to be postponed and asked the government to have some kind of a negotiation, he was turned down. And, he made a statement just, at the night of the election, that was actually an audio recording, saying that the Khartoum agreement of 2019 is dead in the waters. And the implication of that is that you would have a country which would have a lot of influence in Bangui, but out of the region, 75% of the provinces are controlled by the rebel forces. So, whoever wins will have to be able to, maneuver his way around to control those areas that rebel forces occupy.
Okay, even as we await results, tensions are still high. The CAR has a violent and deadly history, like you just mentioned. What would you say is the way forward for the country at this time?
I think, there's a very difficult path for the whoever wins the election. Again, Faustin Theodora seems to be taking the lead. Now, this is a country which is essentially controlled by the UN and MINUSCA forces. The national forces are experiencing a lot of weak control of the state. Of course, there is a ban on any kind of sales of weapons, and that is where Russia comes in with its conflict with the West. So it's going to be a very difficult scenario to to move forward. The African Union, again, is missing in the midst of all this, which means that the so-called silencing of the guns of 2020 to 2063, it's actually dead. So, what happens next is down to the Central African Republicans. But, because a lot of them have been disenfranchised in this election, I think we're just going to go back to the normal situation before now.
All right, huge question. What happens next, David Otto? A lot to keep our eyes on. Security analyst David Otto, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and analysis with us on Network Africa.
Thank you.
Over 8,000 migrants from Asia, the Middle East and North Africa have been left to sleep in the cold as winter hit northwestern Bosnia. This comes amid a dispute among Bosnian politicians over where to house them after a fire destroyed the camp in Lipa. The camp, 25 kilometers away from Bihać town, opened last spring as a temporary shelter for the summer months. It was set to be shut for winter refurbishing on Wednesday, the same day as the fire. Police and UN officials believe the blaze was probably started by migrants who were unhappy over the scheduled temporary closure of the camp and uncertainty about where they would be relocated to. The European Union, which had supported Bosnia with 60 million euros to manage the migrants' crisis and pledged 25 million euros more, has repeatedly asked the authorities to find an alternative to the unsuitable Lipa camp, warning of an unfolding humanitarian crisis. Now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he will welcome a delegation from Morocco to Israel this week to advance newly normalized relations. On Friday, Mr. Netanyahu spoke with Morocco's King Mohammed V and posted a video on Twitter in which he described their conversation. Last week, an Israeli delegation traveled to Morocco, and the countries plan to reopen mutual liaison offices and to launch direct commercial flights. Morocco has followed the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain and Sudan in moving toward normal relations with Israel, but Palestinians have censored the U.S. brokered deals, seeing a betrayal of a long-standing demand that Israel first meet their statehood demand. And back here in Nigeria, the Lagos state government is raising concern over what it calls a rise in the community transmission of the coronavirus, even though it is not as high as it was between July and August. The Commissioner for Health, Professor Abayomi, says although the state has increased its testing ability to between 2,000 to 3,000 daily, a second wave of the pandemic seems close due to general laxity and lack of compliance with COVID-19 protocol. Professor Abayomi explains that the trend in positivity shows the virus transmission is increasing more this festive season because more people are gathering. He also disclosed that 10 oxygen camps are being built across the state, out of which 6 are ready for use. Still to come on the program. We'll meet a 7-year-old Ugandan boy who has become a sensation in the country with his precocious display of aircraft knowledge and budding flying skills. Details in a moment. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us on the program. Still on the COVID-19 pandemic, South Africa has become the first country in Africa to register more than 1 million COVID-19 cases. This comes just days after authorities confirmed that a new, faster spreading coronavirus variant had been detected. Some hospitals and medical centers have reported a huge rise in admissions, putting a heavy strain on resources. President Cyril Ramaphosa is widely expected to announce tougher restrictions to prevent the virus from spreading further. The latest milestone was announced on Sunday by South Africa's Health Minister, Zweli Mkhize. The country has now confirmed 1,004,413 COVID-19 infections and 26,735 deaths since the outbreak began in March. Our South Africa Bureau Chief Betty Dibia joins us now for more on this story. Betty, it's good to see you.
Hello, Tani. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Now, how is the South African government reacting to the country topping the 1 million mark? That's in terms of COVID-19 infections.
Well, there are really no surprises. Probably the timing, the issue came up much earlier than they expected. The scientists had advised that the second wave will soon come, and pleading, and government had been making a lot of announcements regarding people adhering to health safety regulations. So it's really no surprise. They're just taking aback a little bit because it came much earlier. They expected this to happen probably after the holiday season, not before. And we understand that the peak is not even here yet. We had 14,000 plus for about 2 or 3 straight days, 11,000 and 9,000 and 9,000 plus. So the government and the National COVID Command Council, they've been having a series of consultations. They met at the weekend. And consultations are ongoing with different interest groups. You know, you have people who are saying, look, let's call for a ban in alcohol, let's call for a ban, the South African Medical Association is calling for a move backwards to level 2 restrictions. And then there are those who are saying, please do everything, don't touch alcohol. So the government is consulting at the moment, at the same time ensuring capacity and the capability of the health system to absorb what's going on. But many of the places, many of the a number of the high level in terms of the number of COVID cases are quite under pressure. We understand that in KwaZulu-Natal they're thinking of opening 2 more field hospitals. So it's a situation government is seized with at the moment. What the president will announce, if he will announce today, we don't know. We're still waiting.
All right, well, we do understand, though, that the new coronavirus variant known as 501v2 is believed to be driving the surge in infections. At this point, what more do we know about this?
I'll be the wrong person to talk about the variant, but what we know from the scientists is that it's more contagious. The viral load is much higher, so it spreads much more, and it increases the caseloads much faster than what we had before. I understand it was detected probably in the Eastern Cape, which is one of the hotspot provinces where there are harder restrictions compared to some other provinces. So the scientists say they're still looking. Remember, there was some diplomatic issue between the UK and South Africa saying where the variant originated from. Could it have been from South Africa, or because Matt Hancock, the health secretary for the UK, had made an announcement regarding the variant from South Africa, and the health minister here said no, there's no confirmation that it actually came from here, or that it is the same that we have recorded in South Africa that you have in the UK. So these are some of the issues. There is still a lot that is not known about this variant, but the minister is saying, we're staying with the strategy we already have, although the recovery is still high at 84.3%, but that's below what we had before at over 90%. So there's a lot that is still not known about this variant. But the minister is saying, don't panic, we'll stay with the strategy or the management strategy that we've had all along. It hasn't failed us. Still, the scientists advise otherwise.
All right, just give us a feel of what the mood is like at the moment as South Africans mark the Yuletide amid the COVID-19 pandemic.
The people are concerned, and then there are people who are not so concerned, which is concerning government, if you understand what I'm trying to say. We're still seeing street parties. We're still seeing large crowds, although We've seen some videos too from Nigeria, but you know, South Africa is testing much more, so you can say the numbers are higher. You know, you have over 6.4 million tests already done in the country. That's about 10% of the population. So the conduct of the people is what is worrisome. So that's why you're having the higher cases that are going on, and the appeal is non-pharmaceutical intervention, meaning play your part to ensure that you're safe. Maybe there'll be restriction in movement from one province to another, we don't know. So I can't speculate, we'll wait to hear what the president will say. But right now they're appealing to the people to just stay safe.
Yeah, that's what's important right now. Everyone's staying safe and, you know, having fun, but doing it while staying safe. Betty, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed on Network Africa.
Thank you very much.
And finally on the program, a 7-year-old Ugandan boy has become a sensation in his country with his display of aircraft knowledge and budding flying skills. Shima is quite the star on local television, and his name is prefixed in newspapers and on social media with Captain. Take a look. Shima, a lover of math and science. The student is flown as a trainee 3 times on a Cessna 172. He says he wants to be a pilot and an astronaut and someday travel to Mars. His role model is Elon Musk.
In future, I want to be a pilot and an astronaut. I was interested in astronomy because I wanted to go to Mars and the moon. Our moon is called Lunar Moon.
One morning at Uganda's Entebbe International Airport, his instructor asked him to explain how the engines worked on a plane parked on the tarmac. His voice struggling to rise above the roar of a plane's running engines, Shima rattles off the answer.
The inlet tube sucks in the air and it takes it to the compressor. The compressor squeezes it with the fans. After squeezing it with the fans, it becomes hot temperature.
Shima's curiosity for flight was piqued by a freak incident. When he was just 3 years old, a police helicopter flew so low to the ground that it blew off the roof of his grandmother's house on the outskirts of the Ugandan capital, Kampala, while he was playing outside. According to his mother, it triggered something in his mind.
So I was at work, and that time my son used to live at my judge's place, at my grandmom's place, because I never had a maid at that time. So I was at work. They called me. It happened when my son was outside. He spotted everything, what happened. So from that day, my son got much interested in aviation.
Last year, Shima's mother contacted a local aviation academy, and Shima began lessons at home on aircraft parts and aviation vocabulary. After 5 months of coursework, his mother paid for practical flying lessons. He flew 3 times as co-pilot between January and March before the pandemic stopped his practice. Shima has since been focusing on aviation theory and immersing himself in video about aviation and space exploration on his virtual reality viewer. Definitely a bright future ahead of him. And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shuboele.